Enjoy the ride with Crystal Petry. Consulted, so inspiring. Wishing you to.
Hello, I'm Crystal Petry, and welcome to another episode of 60 Minutes With. On this week's episode, we are diving into the world of collegiate sports, D1 to be specific. We are going to learn all about what an assistant athletic director does and how they help sports at your college or maybe your alma mater. And here to educate me and you, we have Kyle Nelson. So welcome to the podcast, Kyle.
Thanks for having me, Crystal. I'm really excited to be here and to be able to share a little bit about collegiate athletics, but specifically being an assistant athletic director at a Division I school. I love it, and so I'm excited to share that with you and everybody watching. So
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, so obviously my first question for you, Kyle, is what is an assistant athletic director? We hear the title, we hear the term all the time, but I don't feel like, myself included, people really know what it is you guys do.
Yeah, so I mean, first, in short, it's exactly what it sounds like. And we are an assistant to the athletic director. But with that being said, it's a little bit more than being a secretary or anything like that. So really the biggest responsibility of being an assistant athletic director is to be kind of the right-hand man or woman or however you want to put it that way, to the athletic director. So here at Lamar, our director of athletics is Jeff O'Malley. He's been here for almost 2 years now, and really doing amazing things here. And so pretty much, we do what he asks us to do, but also we oversee a specific aspect of the athletic department. So for me, I'm the assistant athletic director for development, which is really kind of a fancy word for fundraising. So I oversee our Cardinal Athletics Fund and kind of helping facilitate donations for the student athlete scholarships and also hosting events for our donors and our season ticket holders and our fans in general.
You sound like you have the fun part.
I do.
The party
Yeah,
part.
I love it. Yeah, I get to plan and attend events,
Yes.
not only here but in the community, and I love it. So, like you said, it's the party part. So
It absolutely is. Now, do you help schedule like the basketball games for the girls, the guys, the football games, anything like that?
So I don't necessarily handle the scheduling of it. Usually that's up to the coaches, but for football it's up to the coaches and our athletic director. Usually, like I said, it comes down to the coaches working with the other schools to schedule the games. When it comes to the non-conference part of the schedule, so with every sport we have a non-conference portion and a conference portion. So the conference portion is scheduled by the conference. They figure all that out.
Okay.
The non-conference portion is scheduled by the coaches themselves, and like I said, for football, with the athletic director. And so while I don't help with the scheduling of it, I do have a big part to play in helping plan the themes and promotions that we do at the games and really helping to bring groups in. So whether it's schools or youth teams or anything like that, I've got a big part to play in helping getting people here, but also making sure the groups have a great time while they're here and planning events for them while they're here.
Is there a theme for every game, like every football game, every basketball game, every baseball game?
So not necessarily. So for football, we definitely have a theme for every game because right now we have 6 games.
Okay.
So 6 games, it's easy to come up with a theme for each one. We try to have at least a promotion of some sort at each game for all the game or the sports that have bigger schedules, longer seasons. But as far as a theme, we try to do as many as we can, whether it be, sometimes for football we did a white out last season. So the team wore all white.
Cool.
We gave away white t-shirts, white pom-poms, that kind of thing. But then also sometimes we'll do military appreciation or first responders appreciation, healthcare workers appreciation. We just did Bark in the Park for baseball on Saturday. So we try to fill as many of the games as possible, but sometimes, especially with baseball, having 30 home games in a season, it's hard to come up with 30 different ideas. So it really just depends on the sport, but we definitely try to do as much as we can.
the bark in the park, was that like inviting people's dogs out?
Yeah. So normally we don't allow dogs into the park,
Right.
but we did 2 Bark in the Park days this year where people were allowed to bring their dogs in, and we weren't able to do it this year, but last year or 2 years ago, we gave away some LU branded doggy poop bag keychains
Yeah.
that I still have at my house that we use for our dogs. So when we do those kind of things, we also try to tie in a giveaway or something to make it more exciting, bring more dogs out, and really just make it a fun time for the humans and the animals.
Yes. So, okay, Kyle, you are the Assistant Athletic Director at Lamar University, located in Beaumont, Texas. And tell us about where we are right now. We are in a fabulous football suite. So tell us a little bit about where we are. You guys can kind of see all the space in the background here.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, we're in one of our suites for football. We have 8 that are available to the public normally. We have 1 that's available for purchase now. But really, it's the best seat in the house. We've got AC, we have a TV where we'll have our game on, or you can put on any other game that's going on. We've got a station for food and drinks behind us. Each suite seats roughly 15 to 16, depending on how many people you want to squeeze in here. But we've got 10 stadium seats just in front of us here that you can't see on camera, that are cushioned and really nice. So you can sit in those seats to watch the game. You can sit at the bar stools here like we are. Then we've got a small bar with regular chairs up there. And it's really just a fantastic environment. We have the PA from the football field over the speakers in here too, so you can hear what's going on out there. You can hear the normal broadcast just like everybody else is out there. And it's a great way for businesses to come together and host an employee appreciation, or really the board. A lot of businesses will bring their board of directors and that kind of thing. We have some families that'll rent it out for a game or two to come support their kids that are playing. And really it's just, like I said, I think it's the best seat in the house by far, because 1, you're in the AC. We all know Southeast Texas gets hot, especially in September, October. It's warm. So to beat the heat, you can come up in here and you get a fantastic view of the field, and it's just an amazing experience. Like I said, food and drink included. It's everything you could want in a nicely packed package.
Absolutely. And when I first walked in here, that was literally the first thing that I said was, this is the best seat in the house. I mean, you have such a clear view of the field. It's AC, which is always a plus. As we're doing this podcast, I think a football player is practicing, on the field. So it is amazing in here. So thank you for allowing us to do the podcast in here. As the Assistant Athletic Director, is there an educational pathway if someone wants to become an Assistant Athletic Director?
Yeah, so really, I mean, one of the cool things about working in college athletics specifically is you don't really have to have a certain pathway. The majority of us here at Lamar that work in athletics, the majority of us have a sport management background.
Okay.
Like for myself, I got my bachelor's in sport management, and then started my career here at Lamar in the ticket office. So working in sales, and then kind of just made my way up to where I'm at now in the last just under 2.5 years. So there's, like I said, a handful of us that have sport management backgrounds. A handful of us have business backgrounds or marketing backgrounds. So one of the really cool things is it really doesn't matter what your degree is in, as long as you know what you're doing. Obviously, having a relevant degree helps a lot, and kind of sets you apart. So whether that be the sport management, or whether that be marketing, or even sport marketing, or business, or sport business, or anything like that. But it also really depends on which aspect of college athletics you want to go into. Because like I said earlier, so I'm in fundraising, but we also have the business office that handles all of the finances that come through for athletics. We've got marketing, we've got media relations and communications, we've got the ticket office, we've got facilities and game operations, and then we've got compliance, and we've got a couple other random things. So it really just depends on what you want to do and how you want to do it. But you can get your foot in the door with anything. So there's really no specific way, I would say, to go down that pathway, but you can kind of really branch off from there.
Okay. And what about experience? I mean, for me, I assume you need to at least know about sports, or like a little bit of all the sports.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's necessarily a requirement to know about all sports. So here at Lamar, with us being a smaller school at the Division I level, we don't really have sports-specific departments, except for kind of the media relations and communications. They've got certain sports that they work with. But for example, like for me, while I do development and previously I was doing ticket sales, we're doing that for every sport that we have here. But then when you get to marketing, they've got 2 full-time staff there. They kind of split the different sports between them. I wouldn't say it was a requirement to love sports or to know a lot about sports, but it definitely helps. Because when you're doing what we're doing and you're working with sports, you're working directly with student athletes, you want to be able to understand kind of what they're going through, but also when you're talking to our fans, you're talking to our donors or season ticket holders, whoever is associated with our programs, you kind of want to know why they're here.
Right.
So you need to understand why sports are important to people. And if you love sports, super easy for you because you know why you love them. So you can either relate to people in that way, or you can understand why they love sports because of why they did. And so, like I said, definitely not a requirement, but it definitely helps so much, for sure.
You stated earlier that one of your duties as the assistant athletic director is fundraising. So this next question, maybe it's an obvious question like raise money, but what is the end goal for you as the assistant athletic director here at Lamar University?
Yeah, so safe, short answer is to raise more money.
Yes.
But for me in raising money, like I said earlier, my main responsibility is raising money for the student athlete scholarships. So the more that I'm able to raise in my job, the more scholarships we're able to provide for student athletes, or the more money we're able to give to get some of those, especially in today's day and age with the transfer portal, we're able to give those kind of kids that are transferring from some of the bigger schools. Like we have one running back that just transferred from Boston College.
Wow.
So if I'm able to do my job well, it helps the football team and all the other teams to be able to go and get some of those higher level kids, whether it's in the transfer portal or coming out of high school, to be able to give them more scholarship money to make our teams more successful on the court, on the field, however that looks. So while there's no real specific end goal, the end goal is really to raise more money so that our teams can be more successful.
Yes. Oh my God. You know what? Since you laid it out like that, you're a big deal. You're a big deal here with the fundraising. Oh, that directly leads to the scholarship.
Yep.
So are there other ways that people can contribute to the scholarships? And I'm kind of thinking out loud as I'm asking this question. So I know one way is like the fundraising and things like that, but is there another way?
Yeah, so one of the new things that we're doing for this year upcoming is now every season ticket that we have will have a donation attached to it. So if you're buying season tickets, you're donating to the student athlete scholarships.
Okay.
If you're attending one of the events that I put on or our office puts on, you're giving to the student athletes. And we now have we've just started last year the NIL collective, which I know NIL is a whole new big thing that a lot of people really don't understand, and it changes every day. So there's a lot of things that I don't even know. But that's one way, because that allows, outside of the student athlete scholarships, that the Cardinal Athletics Fund, that allows for our student athletes to receive more money kind of on the side as well. So it's not necessarily a scholarship, but it is kind of directly related to them receiving more money, but that's kind of outside of my responsibility as well. So right now, that's what Jeff, our director of athletics, he's kind of overseeing that for now, until we're able to get somebody into a place to directly handle that, because you have to have somebody that's their whole job.
Yes.
Because it's an ever-changing landscape, and everything's so different every day, with not only how different schools are doing different things, but how different states are doing everything, because that's kind of how it got left up, was it's up to each state on how they want to govern the NIL and what their student athletes are getting and everything. So really, we're trying to expand the different opportunities to give back to the student athletes. And like I said, the first step in that was NIL. The second step is having a donation attached to each of our season tickets.
That's a great idea.
That way, no matter how you're here, no matter how you're a fan, you're giving back more than you realize.
Right, that's such a great idea. Let's talk about NIL for a little bit. First off, explain to us, what does NIL mean, the letters?
Yeah, so NIL means name, image, and likeness.
Right.
So essentially what that means is the student athletes can receive money for the for businesses, or on the greater scale, the NCAA video games, the college football video games,
right,
the college basketball video games, those things. So like I said, on the greater scale with the video games, any student athlete who is in the video game now will receive compensation.
I did not
for
know
their
that.
for their name, image, and likeness. And that's how all of this started, kind of back in really even the early 2000s. But the last college video game that was made was in 2014, and so everything's just kind of been, snowballing from there, because of the name, image, and likeness. Because the student athletes felt that they deserved compensation for EA Sports or whoever was making these games,
right,
making millions off of them in the video game. And completely to their point, they absolutely deserve to be compensated in that sense. And then, like I said, kind of on the smaller scale where we're at, it allows businesses to use them in commercials or social media posts, or throw on their logo and kind of rep it in the community, or however that looks.
What are your opinions about NIL? How do you think it has benefited collegiate sports as a whole, and do you think that it's hurt collegiate sports at all? Yeah,
so I think on the grand scheme of things, it's a fantastic thing. Like I said, it allows for the student athletes to receive proper compensation for these bigger companies to use, who were already using them to make money. Now they're receiving something back in that sense. I think the biggest con of it, if you want to call it that, is it's kind of separating the bigger schools from the smaller schools, and allowing, from a recruiting standpoint, all of the bigger schools who have bigger funding, like Texas A&M, LSU, all of these schools who are Power 5, bigger level, high level, known all around the country, who have all these boosters, have all these booster clubs to bring in bigger talent because they've got more money, which kind of was already happening before all of this, just
right,
under the table, as we saw with all these different allegations and all of that. But it just makes it legal now, which I think, like I said, I think student athletes definitely deserve to be compensated for what they're giving to companies and businesses. But I think, like I said, that the con would be it's separating the level of competition.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. Okay, so kind of back to your duties at hand. As the assistant athletic director, are you over the head coaches?
I am not. So really the person that would be over all the head coaches, again, would be Jeff, our director of athletics. I do have a fantastic relationship with each of our head coaches, and especially in my new role, I'll be working directly with them to really allow to give their student athletes opportunities to get in front of our donors, or to be more active on social media or on our website, kind of using them to help facilitate the donations, and using them to help them in a sense. So each of our head coach I've got a great relationship with. I had one already, working in tickets. Obviously we're working hand in hand, but as far as being over the head coaches, Jeff would be the only one who's over all of them.
Okay. Now this next question is a two-part question. First part, why did you want to become assistant athletic director? Second part, why do you think someone else might want to become assistant athletic director?
Yeah, absolutely. So as soon as I knew I wanted to work in sports, I originally thought I wanted to work in professional baseball. But then I actually right after I graduated from undergrad, I actually became a full-time overseas missionary, lived in Zambia, Africa for over 5 years. And in the process of all of that, realized I didn't want to do that. And just actually kind of stumbled upon the original job that I came here to work at Lamar for, and saw that it was originally came here to do fundraising on a lower level, but then had to start selling tickets due to low staffing here, and really enjoyed that and made my way up the ranks with that. But I realized the fundraising is what I wanted to do. I had spent really over 6 years, if not close to 7 years, fundraising for my mission, for everything I was doing in Zambia, and I loved it. I loved being able to sit down and talk with people and share my vision, share what my goals were and what I was trying to achieve, and requesting money to be able to do those things. And that's exactly what is happening now. And so once I was in the ticket office for over 2 years, and this opportunity here came up. We just created this position for the first time.
With the assistant athletic director?
For development specifically.
Oh, okay.
So as soon as that came up, that's what I knew I wanted to do. My original goal when I first started here was I still do want to be an athletic director one day, to be at the top. So being an assistant athletic director is kind of the next step. Mm-hmm. But I know that even if this is where I kind of stay for the rest of my career, I'm going to be totally fine. Because being an assistant athletic director gives you a lot of the same responsibilities without a lot of the stress. Because when you're the director, you have to worry about everything. So essentially, kind of going back a little bit, my main responsibility is to completely over development and fundraising, but that's my thing. So while Jeff is over everything, I get to be over this one thing and kind of really make that my baby and create that to what it can be and what I know it can be, and then maybe eventually kind of move up from there. But really, I think a lot of the reasons other people kind of get into this same position, whether it be in development or whether it be any other field that can be an assistant athletic director, I think the majority of the people who get into that want to be athletic directors or want to be higher level positions in collegiate athletics. Because usually when you get to that level, okay, this is what I want to do. Whereas, some of the lower level positions, you still kind of know, okay, I might go here, I might go do this. But when you get to that assistant athletic director level, I'm fully in, this is what I want to do, this is where I want to go. I've got this goal in mind.
Right.
So you strive for that, and this is kind of the next step, if that makes sense.
I feel like, yes, that makes complete sense, Kyle. I feel like we could do a whole nother podcast. You were a missionary in Zimbabwe? Zambia?
Close
what?
Enough. Yep.
Wow. Can you speak any of, there's so many languages they speak over there. Can you speak any of the languages?
So, not really. I can understand, so the language of the area that I was in, it was really a mixture of what's called Nyanja, which is the main tribal language of Zambia, and then Chewa, which is actually the main tribal language of Malawi, because we were right on the border of Zambia and Malawi. and so it's kind of a mixture of the two. And I never really took any formal language classes because English is actually the national language of Zambia. So anywhere I went out in the village or some of the areas that didn't speak fluent English, I would bring my ministry partner with me. He was a local Zambian guy, and he would translate for me. But in the 5 years that I was there, I really learned how to pick up on things. So while I couldn't produce it for myself, I could pretty much understand what people were saying, just had to get help saying it back.
Yes. Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, so back here in Southeast Texas, is your job like Monday through Friday, 9 to 5? I would assume it's not, because that's not how sports operate.
Correct. It is not. I would say we probably have maybe 6 weeks of the year where it's Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty much at least mid-July through the end of May, we're Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 with games. So, football season, during football season, we also have soccer and volleyball season going on. So between the three of those, we're guaranteed to have at least one game every week, if not three. And then a football game we're usually here for minimum 10 hours, anywhere from 10 to 14 hours. Soccer, we're usually here for 2 or 3, 4, same with volleyball. So if we have all three of those, you're looking at an extra 17 to 20 hours on top of that. And then once we get into November, we've kind of still got soccer and volleyball overflow. We've got football, then basketball starts. So then, we've got men's and women's basketball. And so sometimes, again, we could have 3 to 5 games in 1 week, that first 2 weeks of November. Mm-hmm. And then if what we're expecting to happens this year with football, we'll make the FCS playoffs this year. And so that will extend the football season into more of basketball season. And then towards the end of basketball season, baseball and softball season start. And then we've got all these events going on. And that's not even including our non-ticketed sports with men's and women's cross country, men's and women's tennis, men's and women's golf, men's and women's track and field, both indoor and outdoor. So we've got 17 sports here at Lamar. So there's a lot going on all year round.
That sounds like a lot.
Yeah, it
and
is.
Do you fundraise specifically for football or for all of those
all
sports?
Yep. So our Cardinal Athletics Fund is all encompassing. It encompasses all of our sports here. With the way the world works and the way, especially here in Southeast Texas, with football being kind of the cash cow, and what a lot of people invest their time in and their money in. Football is our biggest kind of recipient of a lot of those donations, but basketball, really all the sports will receive donations throughout the year. And it depends on the time of year as well. Obviously, summer and football season is when a lot of the football donations come in, and then once you get into the later part of the year, that's when basketball and baseball and softball and all that come in as well. But like I said, even cross country, track, soccer, golf, they all receive donations kind of all year round. So really just depends, but.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
And I know you really summarized it for us, but even in your summary, it's a lot. Okay, so again, we're here at Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas, which is a D1 college. Explain to us, what is a D1 college? Yeah,
so D1 stands for Division I. So Division I, obviously with the 1 at the end, is the highest level of competition when it comes to collegiate athletics. So you've got Division I, Division II, Division III, NAIA, and then a couple others kind of scattered in there. But those are the main ones. So Division I is the highest level of competition. Really the only breakdown into Division I these days is surrounded around football. So like I said earlier, we're in the FCS for football, which stands for Football Championship Series. So essentially what that means is we have a traditional playoff system, and then whoever wins the playoffs, wins the championship. Whereas, the bigger schools, again, like Texas, A&M, LSU, all these, they're in the FBS, which stands for the Football Bowl System. So that's the kind of the separation. So the FBS is the higher level for football, FCS is lower, but we're still higher than Division II, Division III, etc.
Right.
But so that's why really with football you don't often see schools like Lamar playing the bigger schools. You know, you may see it once every other year or something like that, when the bigger schools will pay for the smaller schools to come in and really just get beat up on. You'll occasionally have that smaller school come in and just shock the world and beat them. But really what those games are for is kind of really to just open the year and have the bigger school kind of work out the kinks against the smaller school, and the smaller school gets to kind of supplement their athletic budget with that as well. But then for every other sport, we're all kind of on the same playing field as the bigger schools as well. So that's why, you know, for example, with baseball earlier this year, we had a weekend series at Oklahoma, who was ranked 25th in the country at the time. We actually won all 3 games.
Really?
So, which that was a shock. Not necessarily to us here because we know how good our baseball team is, but kind of in the college baseball world, that was a shock. To beat a ranked team once at our level is huge. To beat them 3 days in a row, even bigger. So anything can happen really in any of the other sports. Football is kind of the big one that you don't often see the upsets or anything like that. But for all the other sports, you know, anything can happen at any point.
You know, I was thinking as you were talking about kind of like the smaller schools playing the larger schools, I was just reading an article about Coach Dawn Staley, who's the head women's basketball coach at South Carolina. She's having problems scheduling her non-conference games because no schools want to play against them.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's even like, so it's funny, kind of back to baseball. We used to actually host LSU here, I think like every other year for baseball. It got to the point where I think we beat them like 3 times in a row here in Beaumont, and they stopped coming because they're not going to come over here to lose to a school that they're not supposed to lose to.
Yes.
And so like things like that happen where, you know, South Carolina's having a hard time because they're clearly the best team in the country.
Yes.
And whoop up on everybody. Nobody wants to go in there and get beat. Like, unless it's the smaller school who's going to get $500,000 or whatever it is at women's basketball, I'm not sure, but that would be the only way. So it's hard to schedule those kind of even bigger non-conference opponents because they don't want a loss on their record just to play South Carolina.
Yes.
Whereas the smaller schools would be like, sure, we don't care. Like,
Right.
we'll get beat up on for some extra money.
Exactly. And we get to play South Carolina and we're on TV.
Exactly.
So it's really a win-win.
Yep.
It's
Exactly.
a win-win.
Yep.
Okay, so I would assume that football, well, you stated earlier that football is kind of the cash cow here at Lamar University, but at a lot of collegiate schools. So I would assume it costs more to like have a football team.
Yep.
Can you, being as specific as you can be, kind of give us the cost breakdown of what it costs to have a football team at a college?
Yeah, so with that, it's actually, I mean, it's kind of hard to do so because it does depend on so many different factors. You know, obviously it depends on what state you're in, you know, the cost of everything. But then it also depends on how many people you have on your team, depends on the size of your school, depends on what conference you're in, depends on what level you're at. So really there's no way to really know for sure, at least, you know, from school to school, how much, and you can't really compare too much. But I think, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I think ours is about $400,000
a year.
Yeah, which a lot of that comes from donations and you know, tuition and that kind of stuff for the football players and everything. And we do have a lot of scholarships that go into that as well. And like I said, I could be wrong about that, but I think it's right around that number. And then obviously the bigger schools are going to be triple, quadruple, 5 times that. You know, they're going to be in the millions of dollars for the bigger schools, and especially the Texas schools, because It's Texas. Everybody loves football in Texas.
It's Texas. It is absolutely Texas. What the recruiting?
Yeah.
How is recruiting done at collegiate schools?
Yeah, so really, there's two different aspects of recruiting. You've got the high school recruiting, and then especially now, you've got the transfer portal recruiting. So a lot of the transfer portal is more done, over FaceTime or Zoom or everything because they're farther away or, they're at a different school. When you're able to talk to them, there's certain windows when you're able to talk to kids from other schools. But the kind of the traditional recruiting is high school recruiting, where our football coaches will literally get in the car, get on the plane, fly to these schools where they'll have one or two guys at least at each school that they're going to see. But then obviously they're keeping their eye out for other guys, whether it be seniors or it be even freshmen. They've got a running list of guys that are showing out, even like I said at freshman level. They keep kind of a star on, like, hey, we need to keep an eye on this guy. Or like I said, so especially with where we're at here in Beaumont, being in Southeast Texas, we've obviously got a ton of talent here in Southeast Texas, but also East Texas, North Texas, really all of Texas. But then we also have a ton of talent in Louisiana, Mississippi. So that's kind of where we focus on our recruiting, is kind of mainly North Texas, East Texas, Southeast Texas, and then West Louisiana. And I'm sure they do a lot of stuff outside of that, but that's kind of where the biggest focus is. So like I said, our coaches will, and that's specific to football. But really, I guess most teams have a lot of players from kind of those same locations. But really, like I said, they just nowadays, even still, just boots on the ground. You drive, you fly, you go see them in person, you talk to them in person, you go meet their parents, and then from there, once there's interest on our part, once there's interest on their part, we'll bring them here for a visit as well. So sometimes that means a big group visit. So you'll see, for example, at a football game, most games you'll see a handful, anywhere from 20 to 40 high school recruits that are on campus here at the game. So they're standing on the sideline before the game.
Okay.
And I know all the other sports will do the same thing. They'll bring them to a game, kind of show them around, get to meet the team, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of aspects that go into it, but it's all really boots on the ground, even still to this day.
Can coaches speak to freshmen, or can they just, like you said, kind of star by the name?
Yep. So they really just put the star by the name, because it's really junior year is when coaches can start reaching out and sending letters and that kind of stuff too. So.
What characteristics do you think someone needs to possess to be a successful assistant athletic director?
Yeah, so you definitely have to be hardworking. You have to have a strong work ethic. I think, kind of going back to your question earlier too, it's extremely beneficial to have a passion for athletics, and really just be able to kind of go through some stuff and push right through, because when you're at this level, you're going to have a lot of responsibilities, and you're going to be responsible for a lot of big things. So you need to be able to not only work hard, but also, when the going gets tough, keep on going. You definitely need to be a people person, because you're going to be doing a lot of talking with people, meeting with people, meeting with coaches and student athletes and all kinds of people. So you have to be able to, I don't want to say be all things to all men, but you definitely need to be able to kind of be one of those people that can fit into any situation, because you never know where you're going to find yourself, whether it's sitting at a game or standing in front of 200 people at a big event presenting an award, or shaking hands and kissing babies. You never know.
Yeah.
You just never know what you're going to have to do that day. So you have to be able to wear a bunch of different hats, and really be able to kind of go with the flow, because there's a lot of times where a big decision needs to be made, and it's not going to be made until the last second because there's so many different things to think about, or so many different areas that need to be taken into account. And you have to be able to work well with other people as well, because while being an assistant athletic director means you're over your department, there's also multiple other assistant athletic directors that are over their departments, and there's such an overlap with all of them. So you have to be able to work well with others, and get along well with others too, and be collaborative in your work. So there's a lot that goes into it, but I kind of say those are the biggest things for sure.
I was waiting for you to say you might find yourself on a podcast too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You never
You
know.
might find yourself on a
You never
podcast
know.
talking to Crystal Petry.
Yeah, exactly. You just never know.
So first off, I want to say congratulations on the promotion to assistant athletic director. While I know you just got here, what would you say is your intention now that you are here?
Yeah, so I mean, my first step, like I said, we haven't. This position, the assistant athletic director for development, is brand new. We haven't really had a development office in at least 2.5 years, probably closer to 3 years now. So we haven't really had one person or two people eventually overseeing the Cardinal Athletics Fund as like that's their sole responsibility. So my biggest goal is really to kind of even backtrack a little bit, backtrack to when we did have somebody kind of in this role specifically, and talk to some of our donors that have been around and have been, whether they've donated or been season ticket holders or just fans in general, going back 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, really sit down with these people and pick their brain on what they want to see happen and how they want to kind of see this handled, and take bits and pieces from each person. Sit down with all of our coaches and say, hey, how can I help you? How can we work together to better this Cardinal Athletics Fund for you and for your student athletes? And then from there, really just kind of piece everything together and just haven't done it yet, but set a goal, a number goal for, hey, this is where we're at right now. This is where I want to be at the end of next fiscal year, and then do everything I can to get there. And I plan to be out in the community a lot more, going to things like the Chamber of Commerce events, right, and being out at any event really in the community, and just showing more of a presence of Lamar, which that's what I've been doing the whole time I've been here. Because when I first got here in January of 22, one of the first things I noticed was the disconnect between the community and Lamar, and then even Lamar Athletics and Lamar's main campus. And there was a disconnect between all three. And now we're seeing the athletics and campus are more connected, and the disconnect between campus and the community and athletics in the community has shortened because of the great things that Dr. Taylor is doing on campus, what Jeff's doing here in athletics, our coaches are doing. We're seeing more of us in the community and more of the community in us as well. And so just to keep building on that and have it not just be me, but have it be our athletics staff, our coaches, our student athletes, just showing up at random events and being there, and not necessarily it always, being a big deal that we're there, but just seeing Lamar Red around the community and getting more involved with businesses and community organizations and everything. So all that, all that is kind of my goal, at least for the next year, and then kind of build upon it from there.
I was talking to you before we got on air that I'm an alum here from Lamar University, LU, and one of the things that, and I don't know whose idea it was, but it was a brilliant idea, and I'm not going to date myself, but this was like early 2000s when I was here. Someone implemented, because at Lamar University, the students would always wear like other college t-shirts, so LSU, Texas A&M, whoever t-shirts, and you would never see us wearing Lamar University t-shirts. So someone implemented, I don't know whose idea it was, but it was a great idea, that for every college t-shirt, someone else's, like LSU, Texas Tech t-shirt that you turned in, you got a free Lamar University t-shirt. It was a huge hit. Like, everybody was talking about it. We were like on the phone and emailing and, hey, you heard about this? How many shirts you turning in? It was huge. So it felt like in a day you went from seeing the LSUs, the Texas Techs, the UT t-shirts to a sea of red across the campus.
I like that. That's a great idea.
It was, a great idea. And I feel like every student, even the teachers, like they all bought into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a great idea. Y'all should bring it back.
I know. I'll talk to Dr. Kelly about that.
Bring it back. Yeah, and everybody was super excited about it. It was wonderful. And like all these years later, like I'm still talking about it. Like I'm still, it's still so fresh on my mind.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how are coaches hired?
Yeah. So I don't know a ton about the process because again, that's something that Jeff handles, and the athletic director will handle at any level. But there's definitely it's really just like any other job. There's most of the time, there'll be an applicant pool that the athletic director will kind of go through and pick out the top tier men or women however, from there, go through the normal interview process and then be brought in for an in-person interview and that kind of stuff. There'll be the occasional situation where a coach is leaving and the athletic director will know, like, hey, this is who I want. Whether it be an internal promotion or they've already talked to somebody, like, somebody might say, hey, if I ever leave my job, Lamar's where I want to go. And then we have a coach leave, Jeff could call and say, hey, it's ready for you, come on down. Or anything like that. And depending on the coach, I don't know exactly, I know it's like this for football, I'm not sure if it's like this for any other sport, but I know our president, Dr. Taylor, has a huge hand in it as well. I believe that's how it is for most coaches, if not all coaches as well. It's not just an athletics thing, it's also a campus thing, because obviously the coaches have a huge hand in what happens on campus too, because they're dealing with students and their student athletes are on campus and they're have such a great impact on the rest of campus, so they want to make sure that the coach is going to instill good values in them as well. So it's a hand-in-hand deal most of the time with athletics and the president. And I believe it's that way at every level.
So upon doing my research, getting ready to sit down and speak with you, Kyle, I saw that at the assistant athletic director position and even the athletic director position at most colleges, I'm not going to say all, most colleges it's male dominated. What do you think needs to be done to equal out those numbers where we have male and female at the top?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, I think with the way the world is changing, in such a positive way, we're seeing more and more women rise to the higher level positions. We're seeing more opportunities for women. And I think we've kind of seen that over the last few years in the college athletics world as well. We're seeing more and more women who are coming to that assistant athletic director level, that associate athletic director level, that director of athletics level. And we're seeing more and more of that. And then another thing that, I don't know, maybe how long ago this was, but this has definitely helped as well, at least at the Division I level, if not most other levels. Each athletic staff will have, it's called a senior women's administrator, so an SWA. So we have one here. Her name is Helene. She's fantastic. So she really, a lot of her job is kind of making sure that we have the right tools in place to be able to hire women, when it comes to that. So we actually are just, I don't know, how official it is at this moment. It will be official probably by the time this comes out. But we're hiring an assistant athletic director for corporate sponsorships. So her main responsibility will be selling, the signs and all the different sponsorship opportunities that we have. And so we now will have another assistant athletic director that is a woman here. And so I think we're at that stage of the world, like I said, where more and more women not necessarily are realizing that they're capable, but the world is realizing that they're capable and they're able. So I think, as the time continues, we're going to continue to see that number increase more and more, just because sports as a whole, and we're kind of seeing this even like going back to Dawn Staley, going to Caitlin Clark, and the big WNBA draft that we just had, and all that. Women's sports are becoming more and more featured. So when that becomes more and more featured, women in sports is going to be more and more featured as well.
Absolutely. Okay, so what is the name of this position that you said it's SWA?
Yep, Senior Women's Administrator. And so she also oversees all of the women's sports as well.
Mm-hmm.
So she's got a huge impact on our women's sports here, but also, like I said, making sure that we're in where we need to be. And I'm not going to get into too much of this because it kind of goes into a whole nother kind of can of worms. But Title IX is a big thing. So a lot of what she does is make sure that we're following Title IX. Not only how we're supposed to, but better than how we're supposed to.
Right.
So, and like I said, with that, Title IX, simply put, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. But the biggest thing of Title IX is you have to have equal or greater amount of women's sports than you do men's sports. So we have one more women's sport here than we do men's. And so a lot of what Colleen does is also, making sure we're in conjunction with that stuff. But making sure we're providing the right opportunities for not only our women student athletes, but also the women who work here in athletics.
Oh my goodness, I love that. And I love how forward thinking Lamar University is on this subject. That's amazing. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this next question, I want to kind of hit on a couple aspects of you. As a man, and as an assistant athletic director, what do you think needs to be done, speaking of women's sports, to get more women's sports on TV, on the radio, in front of the masses like we do with men's sports?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, the biggest thing, at least at our level here, just coming to games. We do the same amount of promotion for, just to compare the two, men's and women's basketball. We do the same promotion that we do for both, the social media and outreach. We do the same amount for both sides of things, but the attendance levels are drastically different. While we did see a huge uptick in our attendance numbers this year for women's basketball, partially because of the success that they had, but also partially because, like I said, we're seeing more and more people starting to realize women's sports are just as good, if not even better. So really just, first would be coming to games, learning more about how the women play versus how the men play, which really is not that much different. Sometimes it's a little bit of a different pace, but it's still the same game.
Right.
So that's first. When the world sees that more and more people are simply coming out to games, the more people that are at games, the more people that are going to be watching the games. Because, especially at a higher level, if they can't get a ticket to the game, they're going to watch the game. Excuse me. And then, so like I said, that's kind of just the first step. And then the second step is when it is on, watch it. Because if they see, we have X amount of viewers, that's 10 times what we had last year, they're going to want to keep promoting it, keep putting it on their networks and doing all that. So it's a lot more simple than I think it seems to be. But to raise support, you have to start supporting.
Yeah.
And if you and I are sitting here talking and you say, hey, I watched the Iowa-South Carolina game last night, and I'm like, you're telling me how great it was, and I missed it, I'm not going to miss it again.
Right.
If they play in the regular season and then they're playing in the playoffs, I'm not going to miss it because you talked about how great it was. So just word of mouth, showing up to games the same way we do for men's sports. like I said, it's simple, it's easy. We just got to do it.
Absolutely. What would you say is, if there's any, this is me assuming that there is, what would you say is the emotional toll of being an assistant athletic director?
Yeah, so with kind of going back to the work hours, I think there's, that plays a huge emotional toll, not only on myself, but I know it definitely plays an emotional toll on my wife as well. We went to lunch together real quick, we both went to pick something up, and we were in the car together, and we were talking about football season, and talking about how I'll probably be doing a lot more traveling with the football team to the away games. Mm-hmm. And she's like, are we going to be okay? Is that going to be too much on us? Is that, so
right.
I would say one small thing, and she's instantly gone through all these things. She's like, I just want to make sure we're okay. And I'm like, if that's the case, if we're not, then I'm not going to go. Obviously this is first. So you definitely have to, while you work a lot of hours at this level, you have to be efficient and very successful in your work-life balance, which is hard when you're at this level because you're kind of always on call. You never know what's going to happen, but you kind of got to learn how to turn it off. And
right.
When you are not at work, don't be at work.
That sounds hard.
It is. It is. But that's the biggest thing. And then obviously a lot, long hours are long hours no matter what line of work you're in, no matter how much you love it. When you're working, 16 straight 60-hour weeks.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And then
Yes.
you get to this point of the year and you're like, okay, I cannot wait for these sports to be over.
Yes.
I am going to sleep for 3 days.
Yes.
And it's good. And, but then like once July comes around, you're like, okay, I'm ready. Let's do it again.
Right.
And then you get to November and you're like, okay, we got to do this for 6 more months. Jeez. But then, but why we do it because we love it, and you just got to refresh yourself. Mm-hmm. So as long as you're able to refresh yourself and you're able to find things that help you avoid burnout are really, kind of the huge pieces and what you have to be able to do. So it does take a huge emotional toll, but you really, early on, you have to learn how to, I don't want to say deal with it, but you have to learn how to manage it and figure out what works for you on how to, de-stress and decompress and all of that. And then if you do have a family, doing it with them. So that way you're not taking yourself away from them because you need to decompress, you need to de-stress, but learning how to do those things with them.
Right.
If that makes sense.
That does make sense. Oh, wow. Okay. So here in Southeast Texas, we are known, and it's been like this for decades, we're known for our superior talent in football especially, and in basketball and track and all of these sports, superior talent that comes out of these high schools. How do we keep the talent here in Southeast Texas? How do we get them to stay here and attend Lamar University and play football here, basketball here, and the other sports?
Yeah, so I think the first step is something that this past year, all of our coaches have been a lot better at is recruiting here. Mm-hmm. We've had some coaches in the past, even before I got here, that didn't recruit here. They recruited elsewhere, and so there was a kind of a stigma almost for a few years where we're not even going to pay attention to Lamar because they're not coming to us. And I had some conversations in my previous role with some of the athletic directors when we did hire our now second year head coach now, Pete Rosmondo, for football. I was calling athletic directors trying to get him to come out to the press conference and meet him and introduce him to everybody. And I had multiple who said, "Why would I come? Because a Lamar football coach hasn't come the entire time I've been here." And it was like, the one guy was like, "I've been here for 12 years and haven't met a single Lamar football coach."
No.
And I was like, and I think 30, 45 minutes down the road. And that was one of Pete's things was he said, me and my staff are going to every single high school in Southeast Texas. And they did. They've done that. So that's kind of the first step. But then the second step, I think, even kind of falls back on me, falls back on us, kind of as an athletics department as a whole, going back to what I was saying earlier, getting out in the community more. When kids, even as young as elementary school, see Lamar out in the community, they meet our players. When they're elementary school kids, they think college football players are the coolest people in the world.
They do.
And when they come to their school, they're going to remember that for the rest of their life. And so that's something that we've been a lot better at this year as well with all of our teams, is getting out in the community, but kind of meeting them where they're at, going to their schools, being a part of their pep rallies and participating in all the games that they do at the pep rallies. And I've been able to help a lot with that, and it's just so cool to see, like, even they get excited to see me when I go back to the multiple school. I'm like, I'm just some guy. Like, I didn't play college football. I haven't played sports since high school. But you see the impact that it's having on the younger kids now, and that might take 5-10 years to kind of come to fruition. But I think the work that we're putting in now, not just with the elementary school kids, but also with the middle school and high school kids too, we're going to see a big change in that 5-10 years down the road, because Lamar has been so much more in the community this year and continuing, that more and more kids are going to be like, I'm going to Lamar from the time they're 7 years old. And when you have that, you're going to have more and more people here. But for example, with football, I think I don't know for sure how many, but we have a lot of incoming freshmen that are from Southeast Texas. We actually have, I don't remember his name, and I should know his name, but one of our incoming freshmen is from Jasper, and he is the highest ranked recruit Lamar has ever
for football.
Yeah, ever brought in.
Wow.
He's a 3-star recruit out of Jasper, and he's coming here.
That's amazing.
And so, like I said, highest ranked recruit Lamar has ever recruited, and gotten to come, and that's going to be huge. So we're getting not only local guys, but higher level talent. And so once that starts to happen, and then we start to be more and more successful on the field, which we're going to see. I mean, we saw a huge turnaround from last year to this season, a 5-game increase in wins. We finished 3rd in conference, and when we do more and more of that, people are going to be like, oh, Lamar's actually good, and it's home. Come together. So, and we're seeing that across the board with all of our sports too. When Jeff, our athletic director, got here 2 years ago, he said, Lamar's a sleeping giant, we just got to wake it up. And that's exactly what's happening. So soccer's been really successful, cross country and track and field have been really successful, baseball's been on fire this year. Across, women's basketball won the conference, the regular season. And we're just seeing more and more, championships, but also really successful seasons. And when the local kids see that, they want to come here, because they're like, I can come here, be successful, and get a degree. I can stay at home, or I can still be with all my friends. True. That whole thing. So, long story short, it's on us. So
yeah. And when you were talking about, and of course this was before the current head coach for football that we have now, like the coaches and assistant athletic directors at the high school saying they've never come.
Yeah.
I was thinking about when you were talking about earlier in the podcast how there's that disconnect between the community and Lamar University.
Yep.
So it's really good that you guys, and I'm saying I'm speaking of all Lamar, but that you guys are being very intentional about bridging that gap with the community. So
Absolutely.
That's really, really good. Okay, so you've been amazing, Kyle. I got a few more questions, and then I promise I'm going to let you go, even though I could stay in this suite forever.
Yeah, me too.
I could stay here forever. Okay, so do you get into all of the games free?
Absolutely. Yep. So not only, all full-time athletic staff gets into games for free. We're usually working. But we also are lucky enough to get 4 tickets to every game. So my wife comes to a ton of games, which is helpful for me too, because while I'm working, I can still stop by and I can see her. And, most games, usually by halftime, most of my responsibilities are done, and I can kind of just sit with her for the second half of the game, and then go back to work once the game's over. But so that's really nice, and so like, and then anytime my wife's parents or my mom comes into town, we have tickets for them. We don't have to worry about paying for anything, and like I said, that's for all athletic staff. So, across the board.
That's a perk.
Yeah, it's a huge perk.
It's a huge
And then
perk.
anytime any away game we get into for free as well. Any of the conference tournaments we get in for free, so we don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
That's so good. So do you, like for the away games, do you just like show your badge, or do you get tickets for that as well, like 4 tickets for those as well?
So usually we request a credential,
Okay.
and so we'll get a badge that we just kind of show once we get to the gate, and kind of go from there. And that we can request tickets too if we actually want to have an official seat or whatever. But most of the time, when at away games, especially for football, we're usually just kind of standing on the sideline with the team. And then any of the other sports like basketball, baseball, soccer, any of the other sports that aren't football, it's usually general admission where they let us in. So we just sit wherever or stand, somewhere kind of out of sight, so we can pace and we can say some things under our breath that we shouldn't be saying in front of fans.
Yes. That's so good.
Yeah, I think so. At the basketball conference tournament, especially the women's championship.
It was so good.
Yeah.
I watched it on TV.
Yeah, so towards the end of the game, when our women's basketball team was playing Corpus Christi, and we weren't doing so hot in the second half, you could look around the top of, just above the bleachers at McNeese. They have the concession stands and everything. And if you were looking up from down low, there was Jeff in one corner. There's like 3 other people, and then I'm in another corner, and we're all just kind of pacing, not watching the game, and just watching the game, but just freaking out and wishing them the best. But
right.
I can't. I get too involved, and it sometimes is not good. So sometimes I have to separate myself.
Yeah.
Especially now that I'm at, the assistant athletic director level and senior staff of the athletic department. I
Have
can't
to remain
really,
professional.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So walk away. Because sometimes those referees are just...
Listen, we could do a whole podcast on these referees.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we can.
But they might find a way to find us.
Yep.
But still.
That they would.
Still. Okay, so and this is me assuming that you have a favorite sport.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite sport?
So it's kind of a tie
Okay.
between football and baseball. Those are the 2 sports that I played the most. I played baseball pretty much my entire life through sophomore year of high school. Then I played 4 years of high school football, and then I actually played 2 years of semi-pro football after high school.
Wow, okay.
So definitely. So when it comes to being in person, football and baseball are definitely tied. On TV, I definitely would rather watch a football game, just because baseball is a little bit slower on TV. Now, don't get me wrong, I will watch.
No, you are right.
I will watch baseball all day long, but if I had to choose, I definitely would pick football. But even like in my office, I have a TV, and all this time of year, the day games, I'll turn baseball on the TV, and not really be paying attention, but just kind of listening to it, and really, and I love it. So, and my dad, he's a huge baseball fan, and that's part of the reason why the moment I came out of the womb, I had a baseball in one hand and a baseball glove on the other hand.
Yes.
My dad is probably the biggest Boston Red Sox fan on the planet, and so I'm originally from Florida, the Fort Myers area, which is where the Red Sox play spring training.
Okay.
And the Twins do too. But my dad would take me out of school to go watch the spring training games. Yeah, that's how dedicated he was, and I loved it.
Yes.
I lived and breathed baseball from the time I was born until sophomore year of high school, and then kind of transitioned to football. But they're a tie for sure. But baseball is my first love. I'll put it that way.
Excellent. Okay, my final question for you. Again, you just slide stuff in there. You used to play semi-pro football?
Yeah, I did for 2 years, right after high school. Yeah. So I technically started in high school, pretty much throughout all of high school, I didn't want to play football after high school because I was a little lazy and just didn't think it was for me. And then football ended senior year of high school, and I was like, that was a mistake. So then it was too late to try to go to school anywhere, and didn't play football there. So I found a team in Fort Myers that I ended up playing for, like I said, for 2 seasons, and absolutely loved it. But then I did 2 years of community college at home as well, and then went off to a different school. And I was going to play there, but I did not do so hot in the first 2 years of school because I was playing football and I was working full-time and in school full-time. And so I had to cut one of the things, and so I cut football, unfortunately. But it worked out to my benefit because I was able to kind of be towards the top of the class once I transferred and then got my degree and was working, and that's how I ended up here. So,
you know, that's one of the things I love about this podcast. You learn so much about people.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, I don't feel like my life is that interesting until
I
start talking to people, and then they're like, wait, what? You did that? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess so.
I know, you just kind of say it so casually, like, oh, by the way, I was a missionary, and oh, I played semi-pro football. Like, did he just say that?
I did.
Okay, so my final question for you, Kyle. Who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast, but you have to help me get them on?
Yes, so the first person I thought of is my dear friend Danielle Sutton.
Okay.
She is the co-founder, and I think now her title is director of 409 Family. So one of the kind of up-and-coming, bigger community organizations in the area, and does a lot for the community, and really started with my other friend and her dear friend Joanna, started a Facebook group that was called Blessed Moms of Southeast Texas, and it was really a way for really homeschool moms to kind of come together during the days and get their kids together and make a community. And then it just kind of blossomed from there, and now 409 Family is this much bigger deal. They actually just had a big event at
Terrell Park.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes.
And so I was unfortunately not able to be there this year, but I was there last year for the first one, and Danielle is very excited. Finally got to talk to her yesterday. She said she is very interested and would love to get to chat with you and get on here and get rolling. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sitting down and saying yes to my podcast.
Of course.
Your life is super busy and your job is super busy, so thank you for the time. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
I appreciate being able to be on here.
Yes.
It's awesome.
And thank you so much for tuning in and watching. You can get Kyle's podcast and all of my other podcasts on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.
Come on, let's go on a journey. Sit back, buckle up, enjoy the ride with Crystal Petry.